Sign up for the newsletter now to stay up to date with everything that is taking place, all the videos that are being posted. Follow the link down below. And this afternoon, we're going to be talking about the Senate hearings between Google, Facebook, Twitter, and so-called representatives. I want to draw your attention to the revelation that these tech companies are already in bed with our government. And so it's a show. It's a farce of an investigation, just like other investigations that are televised before the public. But like problem, reaction, solution, it has a predictable outcome, which is probably IDs to use the internet, people being able to reach less people that are independent media activists or voices of reason, people like myself and others that you may enjoy on YouTube or on social media. They're shrinking our reach while they allowed Russia to do what Russia was doing for a number of years. So people need to not be in denial that there's been a flooding of fake news on the internet. I'm a pioneer in discussing it. I was discussing it before the election cycle, proving that I've been concerned about it as an issue and it being having nothing to do with the 2016 election. That's why when I cite that I've been talking about it for 5 years, there's a reason to that. It has nothing to do with the 2016 election. As someone who's been warning about World War III for over a decade now, the purpose of me calling out fake news back in 2013, right? Those fake stories about Obama and Putin going to have a war and the aliens intervening and all different types of disinformation that was trending at websites like beforeitsnews.com, videos that were trending on YouTube, posts that were trending on Facebook. And I was noticing then, before people were freaked out about immigrants, people were freaked out in some what I would call test runs, especially on people that are into conspiracies. And there are many conspiracies that are real, but they've had a lot of practice in the last decade flooding the internet with disinformation. So take a look at these periods, for example, right? The David Means of the world that talk about Nibiru, Planet X, tribulation, end times. Every few years, we have hysteria surrounding such a perception that the end is near or that the end is here. And by the way, what will be of our reach on social media, we don't know. That's why signing up to this newsletter is very, very important. So when this video goes out, you get this video in your email inbox. Thank you very much. By the way, sign up, confirm it, and then in the next 24 hours, look for the following videos. Look in your junk folder. This is how it's set up. It's set up, you need to click on it in your email. Find it in your junk folder if it put it there. It put my own newsletter in my own junk folder today because I just started using the newsletter. There's now 45 of you on it. So it's automatically going to see it as junk because it does that to newsletters. Tell it that it's not. Okay, so this is the type of stuff that's happening. They're reducing our reach. I have 13,000 subscribers on YouTube. Yet like a very small fraction and percentage is actually being notified when there's a new upload. That's why this is happening. Okay? It's happening for a reason. So, should we expect things to get easier on us as these supposed investigations continue? Or like the 9/11 Commission report, are we about to get a police state? An internet police state out of this. And you know that event in Lower Manhattan that everybody's talking about? But they won't question its legitimacy like they did the Las Vegas shooting. Many people on the interwebs, which is unfortunate. They still don't get it. Events are being manufactured that tear our society apart. And they linked him to social media. The question is, how is it that Twitter for so many years had so many profiles that were allegedly giving their allegiance to terror groups? Why was that? And this was years ago. I mean, these are big time websites with big time servers that are already allegedly in bed with the intelligence community. Why would there be that much extremism to begin with unless they were a part of the process of fermenting it, polluting the waters, false flagging it so that they could take it away, so that they could take away even the anonymous voice? They've been talking about this for years, taking away the anonymous voice. So people maybe have to have a license or an ID to use the internet. Really, how far away are we from that in the future? And how can that go wrong? How can that go wrong when you have that type of a system to where you're forced to reveal who you are in a day and age to where there may be serious consequences for speaking your mind? See, a lot of people, I think, have been a little bit too lax about the surveillance society, right? Because it hasn't really affected them yet. I think a lot of people have become really addicted to their supposed smartphones without realizing the downfall of it. But by people, right, letting technology influence them and how they perceive events around the world, it's affecting how we're relating to each other. I've experienced it. There's a dark side of social media. It can warp our reality. It can trigger us to be afraid and be afraid of things, people, places, and things that we shouldn't be afraid of when we should be building community. So I've been noticing this anti-community narrative building and building and building on social media and posts. I've talked about it for years, being promoted by Facebook and stating that they were lying, that Zuckerberg was lying when he was saying that he was bringing out AI to somehow put a stop to extremist content. What does that mean? That means there might be a much more than likely, nefarious reason for the rollout of AI. I don't want to predict the worst of the worst, and I like to see the positive in technology when it's there. And that includes Google and that includes YouTube because they have helped me reach so many. But their current rules, algorithms, and decisions show a more frightening picture emerging. And who knows who's really pulling the strings with that corporation and just how many changes there actually has been behind the scenes, that which we don't know. We don't even know anything about those humans, alleged humans, at least we would assume that they're humans, that are there to review videos after the bot often demonetizes our videos. And I've been hoping for a little bit of hope because I've worked for 12, 13 years, going into my 13th year now. I've lost about 80% of my income, AdSense income, thanks to those of you. And I believe there's a new person that signed up to On Demand. And also those of you over at Patreon that are signed up at any amount per month. Thank you very much. But very important that you sign up for the newsletter because they're punishing us, the little guy. And they're punishing the content creator from the left and the right to the left. I get upset. I've said this before when I see others playing victim. And please, by the way, write this down. Follow the link down below. Enter your email and then look for it in the junk, spam, or regular inbox. Confirm it. Confirm. Confirmation. Affirmation. When I see people that are doing really well complain about the man censoring them and they got 500,000 views, you know, uh, on a video or subscribers, 500,000 subscribers, that's not a person that I think is being held back by Google. I smell some BS in some cases. So I think um, some people use some of that to manipulate their audiences. As for myself, it's frustrating 4 years later, only seeing maybe 100 to 200 views per video, or in some cases less, like yesterday. And I understand that it's not all very, very interesting. Ooh, let's click on this. I understand there's a lot of news out there, but I know that I'm reaching less people less of these subscribers when new videos go out. So I know this is absolutely necessary. So where are we going to go from here? Well, we're going to go from reaching people primarily on YouTube to reaching people directly. And even in some cases, more of our income coming from other sources other than AdSense, as that potentially is in danger of being eroded, which is the only way some of us are even surviving. And that's a very corrupt thing to do to content creators. But are they really going to hold, right, certain websites accountable? And this is what I've been saying. Let's return to this. This is what I've been saying for a number of years. There are websites out there that are the worst, that have been promoting fake news and fake threats and things of that nature, and they haven't really been called out by the Washington Post. The Washington Post, in its list of 200, I've said this before, went after independent news websites that may have had some articles on it, hearing Putin's side of things or Russia's side of things. And even though I'm not a fan of Russia or may not agree with them giving Russia the benefit of the doubt, doesn't make them a Russian agent, whoever the website is. There are many in that list of 200 that are big in the alternative media that were called Russian propaganda, and that was BS. But was there actual fake news and disinformation that I personally saw and witnessed on social media? Because, of course, they mark me as a conspiracy buff through my social media activity. So there's all types of that stuff that I personally saw and was emotionally affected by and felt threatened by and horrified by, to see people take that propaganda and run with it and then make decisions, extremist decisions, and people really becoming radicalized by some of this content on the internet where they weren't a few years ago, by playing a part in this psychosis that it's us versus them. Only if you want it to be. But to put everybody into a box, right? That's unfortunate. That leads to suffering, that leads to conflict, that leads to a divide, and that leads to a manufactured civil war conflict. And there's various forms of that manifesting. In fact, I have some interesting audio that I may share with you from James David Manning. In fact, let me just go ahead and do that right now. I don't agree with everything the man has to say, but since we are on the topic, and I'm going to bring this up, I want to make sure that you do have this written down. But on the topic of a manufactured divide within this country, a manufactured civil war,
man, off the meat wagon. And this huge steak, weighing, I don't know, 4 or 5 pounds, he had it in his mouth. And he was going back to his house to enjoy the eating of this huge steak. And it was so big, it was almost dragging the ground. And he was walking along the side of the river as he made his way back to his house, the doghouse. And he looked in the river rather, and there was what he saw, another dog with a big steak in his mouth. So seeing the dog in the river, or what he thought was a dog, he opened his mouth to take the steak out of the other dog's mouth and drop the steak that was in his mouth. What he saw was his own reflection in the river. And he thought it was another dog and another steak. And he wanted to, even though he had a steak, he wanted to take the steak that the other dog had. Greed is a terrible, it's one of the alleged 7 cardinal sins. There's several of them that are listed. And greed, we understand, rises right up near number 1 in the 7 most deadly sins that man can do. The people that are billionaires today, they got more money than they can ever spend. Where they just spend $1 million a week, they couldn't spend it all. And yet they want more. And they put in power people in the government in a rich and a blessed nation where God has blessed this nation, America and Europe, to get more money from the blessings of God. Every dollar that Donald Tribulation Trump puts in his pocket, or any other Warren Buffett or Bill Gates, all that money is money that God has allowed to prosper in this nation. It's God's money. Now, they can't get it by prayer on their knees. And many of the people that are assigned to be tithers and first fruit givers will not. We will do with our sexual as they would have it. They have turned their backs on the word of God. They, in many ways, are more evil than those that promote sodomy. And while sodomy ranks way up on the Mount of Everest in terms of being evil. But when an entire group of people and their religious leaders in order turned their back on God and began to seek man, turned their back on the power of the word of God and its fidelity, by allowing someone like Tribulation Trump, by knowing that he is a rapist, that knowing that he has assaulted the sanctity of God, by knowing that he is a servant of Satan, by promoting lies and being praised for the lies that he tells, all for the purpose of gaining power over those in the blue states, believing that God will use ultimate evil at the rate in which evil itself has never been used, that God's method to destroy the blue state is to use the ultimate evil person that has ever walked planet Earth. And that person being in Tribulation Trump. They both have abdicated. They both have walked away. They both have raised their swords against the golden scepter of God and against the preciousness of his word. And so God has left them, and without the spirit and presence of God, they will kill each other at a rate in which the world has never, ever seen. And by the way, this will not just be affected here in America, but it will be affected wherever the Japheth man, who's the minority of minorities on planet Earth, with only 700 million in Europe and America and in the Western society. So we are again now at a second civil war. We're at a point now where the red states and the blue states are going to fight each other to the death. And blood will run at the height of the horse's bridle. The Lehigh Valley and the Ohio valleys of Pennsylvania and Ohio will be filled with the blood of the red and the blues as they fight. Gettysburg will once again be a great battle call as these fight over the economics, as God has turned them both over to reprobate minds. What we are now looking at now.
He continues. I'll go back.
Nation against nation and brother against brother. You know, when God said, his name is Jesus, said the kingdom shall rise and nation against nation and false Christ. All you have to do now is look at America. I have this one final thing to say, and I promise not to inflict myself upon you any further. When you read Jesus' prophecy about nation against nation and kingdom against kingdom and the false Christ and the false prophets, you will notice that India does not have people teaching Christ in a major way enough to have a false Christ. Nor is it in Russia or in China. Jesus was talking specifically of nation against nation and kindred against kindred. He was talking specifically of America, where the heart of the tribulation will be discovered and be found. My friends, there is nothing that anyone can do to turn back the prophecy of God. We can pray that God will deliver us from being a part of those that have raised their sword against the power of the word of God. But these white people are going to kill each other.
And that, in a nutshell, is where we're going to pause it. Now, having said that, I don't agree with everything. I think some things that man has said are offensive to various peoples around the world. So understand, when I play a clip from someone, is not an endorsement of all of their ideas. However, hear from this man, this pastor in New York, we can hear this warning of a second civil war, what he called a white civil war, even before the election, as we look at what's happening in the street between many white people, Antifa on one side, freedom of speech rallies, Trump supporters on the other. And then there are those of us that do not necessarily associate with either side, but we may have found ourselves targeted because we are independent. And this targeting of actual independents, people that aren't Republicans, people that aren't Democrats, this also comes from this propaganda on the internet that has been fermenting. So this is actually going to be something that I'm going to come back down to, that I'm going to have to discuss as more revelations come out. But again, remember, Google and YouTube are in bed with those senators. Okay, they've received money from the tech companies. Some of those are into some pretty rotten things behind the scenes, like Mr. Coons. Mr. Coons there that was on that actual Senate hearing. Well, for those of you that have seen my video of creepy Joe Biden with those senators literally giving their children to Biden in tribute as he groped them, one of those senators was Mr. Coons. As I said in a video in that year of 2015, where I'm discussing why I think they put that out there on C-SPAN in plain sight for us to see that groping on the part of Joe Biden, the vice president of the United States at that time, that symbolized power. Doesn't mean whether it's Trump, doesn't matter whether it's another puppet, vice president, president, or somebody else. It was a show of that type of mammalian power over children and over the parents of those children, and the way that those parents offered up their children in tribute, if you will, to Predator Joe Biden, who now they say is going to run in 2020. Very, very interesting. And now we see literally, right, these moves to World War III, and the Senate hearing really being a major step in that stepping stone, step upward to that particular reality, or should I say, step downward. As of course, we, the independent voice on the internet, find our reach shrinking. So I'm going to be back with more.